It's once again time for another post-regeneration story. This time, the Sixth Doctor's disappointing, but not terrible. It's bad, but not terrible post-regeneration story, The Twin Dilemma. And despite what I say at the start about it potentially being a rant, I don't end up ranting about it. So you've read the title, right? This review will not be a rant. Sorry to anyone who wanted one, though. But anyone who didn't want one, happy birthday. Oh, okay. Whatever. The Twin Dilemma. Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here, and welcome to my review / potentially rant, depends on how this review plays out, of the 7th and final story of Doctor Who Season 21, and the first story to feature Colin Baker as the 6th Doctor, The Twin Dilemma, the famously most hated Doctor Who story of all time, the one that's generally considered the worst, and always came last in Doctor Who magazine's polls of best stories. Whilst the top position changed for each poll, it was Genesis of the Daleks for 1998. 2009 was the previous story, The Case of Androzani, and 2014's the most recent one was my personal favourite story, The Day of the Doctor. I think there was a different one in 2003. Things were a bit different with that one. Twin Dilemma did not come last there, but in the case of the other three, it always came last, which is both a surprise and a not surprise. I mean, it is the most hated story as far as I'm aware, but considering it's always third place when the top position kept changing, the bottom place stays the same, even after other stories have come in after 1998 and after 2009. And I think if there was going to be another poll, I think there might be a few other stories that may knock it out of the bottom position. I'm looking at you, Hellbent, even though I consider 2 to be even worse than Hellbent, at least 2. But anyway, so Twin Dilemma. This is not as bad as Hellbent, it's not as bad as Warriors fucking Gate, and it's not as bad as fucking Space Pirates, in my opinion. However, I can safely say this is indeed a bad story. It's not as bad as some people might make it. It's not the worst story of all time. It might be one of the worst post-regeneration stories. It's either this one or Time in the Rani. I'll let you know when we get to that one. And definitely one of the worst opening Doctor stories. And it's also one of the worst season finales. Case of Androzani really should have been this season finale. J&T, you really should have made the audiences wait 10 months before watching the new Doctor in action, because I don't think, because with the end of this story, with the Doctor's attitude and character here, I don't think you'll be having many people tune in for season 22, unless you put some sort of mega push into promoting that season, such as having reoccurring villains, such as the Cybermen, for example. So, yeah, having the Twin Dilemma as the final story of season 21, having it as a story overall is actually a bad idea, but having it as season 21's finale, bad choice. I think it actually should have been a 5th or 6th Doctor story during their runs rather than a post-regeneration story. Okay, so what's the story about? Well, we'll put the regeneration stuff to the side for now and just focus on the story for a minute, because I will get back to that other stuff. Okay, the plot sees a former mentor and friend of the Doctor. Basically, he's been overthrown by some giant slug creatures on this planet. Yeah, inspiring choice, writers. And so he needs these twins on behalf of the slug creature and these other creatures to basically calculate some sort of way to bring some planets, including the planet Mestel, where the slug people and he are from. Well, he's not from there, he's in charge of the planet, and where the slug people housing, and they're trying to get them closer to the sun. However, what the slug creature really wants is for that planet to get closer to the sun, so that his slug creature things can go and take over the universe somehow. Okay, this is a bit stupid. This is stupid. Oh, goodness. Oh, and with the villain designs, I thought the tractators looked too much like giant woodlice. This guy is a giant owl-faced slug creature. Yeah. Okay. I can't take this seriously. And he's also these kind of antelope headed creatures. I didn't even recognize that guy. Where's that guy from? But these giant antelope creature guys are all wearing these funny robes and costumes. Oh, it's so silly. Oh, I can't take it seriously. I'm sorry. Oh, and the twins. Fuck, they're annoying. Oh, they're so annoying. They look like teenagers or young adults, but they sound like they're in their seven. They sound like they're 7, not just not just what they say and their tone and how they say it. It's actually their voices. They sound 7. I mean, no offense, but they sound younger than they look, and I think they needed some twins around the 10, 11, 12 age range, rather than ones who look about 15, but in height, but sound about 7. Yeah, and they're very annoying, and they're very dull and very uninteresting. The whole plot around them is boring, and I hate that we open on them. We have the first scene. If this was a normal story, as I suggested, it wouldn't be that much of a problem, because they've been doing that quite a lot. Open on these scenes, make some of them quite short before we go into TARDIS stuff. But in this case, this is a post-regeneration story. This is a post-regeneration story, and, I'm going to go there. I am going to go there. I'm going to go through every single post-regeneration, our first Doctor story, what the first scene is. I can't remember Time in the Ranis, but I presume it's something to do with the plot. But I'll definitely do all the others. Okay, ignore the first Doctor's first story, because that's an Earthly Child, and that's fine, him not coming into about 10-15 minutes into the story, because that's setting up the story, setting up the universe, and building the characters. That's perfect. Second Doctor, Power of the Daleks, opens with the regeneration, post-regeneration scene, with the regeneration in a pre-title sequence in the 2016 animated version. Absolutely perfect, because it's the first one. We've got to open on what's just happened, because it needs explaining. Okay, with the third Doctor, we start with the spears, the spears coming down and crashing into the field. Unit soldiers have detected them, and they start looking for them. And Sam, the poacher, is around there. He witnesses them, and he will later take one of them. And that is part of the story, so that's fine. And then the third Doctor turns up, and that then kicks off the rest of the story. Fourth Doctor, we immediately follow the regeneration, which is what we quickly recap the regeneration for the first time. And then we we have the post-regeneration scene, the first scene with the new Doctor, and then we get the scene with the robot attacking wherever it is, I can't remember, but its first attack we see on screen. We get that right after the bit with the Doctor recovering from his regeneration, and also that scene introduces Harry as well. Fifth Doctor, again, post regeneration scenes recaps, this time again in the pre-titles. And then we get to see what happens and then we cut to a few minutes just afterwards, and they're running back to the TARDIS. Perfect. Well, almost. Then we get this one, and it opens on the boring twins and their dad, and they're having this weird argument about their mother, and it doesn't really make sense. For some reason, they hate their mother, but they don't really say why. Yeah, this scene could have actually been saved to after the scene with the Sixth Doctor and Perry, after the regeneration has just happened, and the Sixth Doctor's now standing up and just all beaming and smiling, for some reason. yeah, a bit of a time jump has happened, and without a recap of the regeneration, I'm not really that happy about that. We really need the recap of the regeneration at the start of this one. Time of the Ronnie, I can't remember what happens, but the regeneration is in a pre-title scene, and I'm sure it's got something to do with the Rani. Or maybe the people on the planet. That's probably something important plot-wise. With the twins here, the scene where you have them doesn't really set up their character, nor does it set up the plot, I think. And if it had to be there, then it should have come after the scene with the Doctor and Perry in the TARDIS. Well, after the first scene, I should say, of that. TV movie, most of the story, of course, features the 7th Doctor before the 8th, he regenerates into the 8th Doctor. And then after that, it's the rest of the plot. I'll skip the War Doctor because he doesn't really have a proper post-regeneration story, as far as I'm aware. Maybe there's a comic one. I don't think there is an audio. With the 9th Doctor, Rose spends its first couple of minutes setting up the main companion and seeing the life and the new world, and it's setting up the universe again. And then we get to see the Doctor about 5 to 10 minutes in, and brilliant reintroduction for the Doctor. 10th Doctor, the first, technically you got the Children Need Special to do all the post-regenerated talky stuff and all of that, and then Christmas Invasion, he pretty much arrives in the first scene of that. 11th Hour, the story pretty much opens on the Doctor. It opens, and the whole story is him trying to recover from his regeneration. But the first scene sees him trying to stay in control whilst recovering. 12, we see Dinosaur in the Thames and the Paternoster Gang, and that works because the Paternoster Gang are there. They're helping. That they're going to be important to the story. And then once the TARDIS is then regurgitated out of the dinosaur, it then lands, and we then get the new Doctor, and it's pretty much setting up his character pretty much straight away. And then 13, this one also is pretty similar to Twin Dilemma in the fact that we don't see the Doctor straight away, but like with Spearhead from Space, it's setting up the plot. It's setting up the characters. We're getting introduced to our new companions, and also to Grace, and then the new monster, and then the Doctor is able to fall into the train. So that's absolutely fine. That's actually the best example of the setup of the story before the Doctor arrives being done the best, whilst examples like the 11th Hour and Christmas Invasion are the best ones where the Doctor shows up immediately. Problem I have with Twin Dilemma's first scene is that it's not actually setting up the plot, nor does it actually give us some character development for the twins. They're just boring, and they stay boring, and they stay uninteresting. But the scene itself is irrelevant, considering what comes later. I mean, the Professor guy could just as easily have come home and found his children missing without needing a scene of him going out. And I don't get their hate for the mother. What? They didn't give a reason. Why was she a fool? And why do they think their father could become a fool? Yeah, it's never explained. And yeah, it's just weird. It should have opened on the TARDIS. And speaking of the post-regenerative stuff, let's talk about the post-regenerated scenes. Okay, and this is a positive and a negative here. I'm going to do a negative first, quickly. 6th Doctor's character. Okay, I don't mind going for the more abrasive, rude, sometimes annoyed, grumpy, angry, tougher, darker Doctor. I don't mind that, just as long as you do it in a good way. I think they started doing that with 12, but it didn't quite work after Series 8, and they decided to just drop it, which kind of affected Series 9, but they managed to find a balance with Series 10. And definitely with Colin, the 6th Doctor, with the 6th Doctor, he will get better throughout his tenure. But with this story, it's a bit too... It's kind of a very big shift after the 5th Doctor. It's a very big shift. And yeah, after all the shit the 5th Doctor had to go through, you can tell that his new incarnation is going to be tougher. It's going to be tougher for the universe he's got to face. He's still got evil to fight, so he's going to have to be tougher. However, it seems that he lacks emotion, he lacks compassion. That his predecessors and even successors, including 12 and even the War Doctor, would have. Or at least at this stage, before 6, by the part 3 cliffhanger of this story, he starts to care about his friends. And he will go on to care in the other stories later down the line. I particularly love a scene in Mark of the Rani where the Rani says that Peri is irrelevant, and the Doctor says, "Not to me, she isn't." I love that scene, and I think that highlights 6 being a great character there. But we've still got 3 stories till then, so we've got to sit through this one first. And yeah, I know the regeneration hasn't gone smoothly. You can tell with the end of the previous story when it happened. It hasn't gone smoothly. You can tell he's a bit wrong in the head. That seems to be a problem with all of the JNT era Doctors. They're never fully stable. Well, none of them really are fully stabled after the regeneration, but these ones in particular seem to be in some very troublesome. 5, I can't remember what's happening with 5. He just found his regeneration quite traumatizing, I guess. 6, he's wrong in he's got these flippancies, and 7 has, well, thanks to the Rani, amnesia. 8 is more of a is an amnesia that's more biological than 7's, but yeah, there's usually something wrong with the JNT era Doctors after their post-regenerations, and I would also include 4 as well, because 4 was not quite right in the head when he started, although that sort of did seep into his personality as well. With 6 it does as well, but not to as much of an extent. And yeah, the balance just doesn't quite work here. It works better in season 22, but it doesn't work here. And oh god, the scene where he tries to strangle Peri, that's possibly one of the worst scenes of the entire show. No, you don't want your new Doctor to make that impression on the audience. Especially a companion he's just sacrificed his previous self to save. Otherwise, there'd be no point. There'd be no point saving that companion if you're going to have them strangle her literally next episode. It's not handled well. I think the character does grow throughout the story, but even by the end, he says a few things, and I think this is more directly to the audience rather than to Peri. And I think that would be putting audiences off for a good long time. One story in, and you're putting the audience off. This is the problem. I think people who wanted to hate Series 11 just because there was a female Doctor wanted to happen, but probably would be annoyed to know that didn't happen. So yeah, Series 11's opener managed to introduce a Doctor that we would like mostly. Well, I say like. I don't know about love, but certainly like enough to keep watching. And the same could be said for Deep Breath to a lesser extent. I mean, 12 was a bit harsh, but he wasn't heartless. And the same could be said for 9 if there was a post-regeneration story. He's damaged, but he's still likeable. 6 is actually it's difficult to like the 6th Doctor after this adventure. When we get to the next series, that's when we'll start liking him. But after this story, it's difficult to like him after the end. There are likeable points of him throughout the story, but by the end, it's difficult to like him as the new incarnation, unlike the other incarnations. And I mean the other incarnations, literally all of them. Okay, maybe 1 it takes some time to get to like him, but that's part of his character growth as well. The closest exception is possibly 1, but that's when they're building up the character as a whole. And yeah, 1 isn't quite that likeable by the end of An Unearthly Child, but he's likeable enough to watch as the main character. And then by the end of Edge of Destruction, when they've kind of got through this whole the first 3 stories, he's definitely very likeable. He's actually quite likeable by the end of the Daleks. In fact, I might even argue he's quite likeable by the end of An Unearthly Child, but it's quite. But he's probably the closest exception we've come to this. But definitely all the other Doctors have been likeable by the end of their post-regeneration stories, including the War Doctor in his appearances. But with 6, it's possibly the only one that audiences will be put off after their first story, heck, maybe even the first episode, with the character, although they might stick around to see how the story goes. But I can definitely see them being put off by the character after the first story, and hence why Season 22 would need to go above and beyond to bring them back in. Because the new Doctor is supposed to bring in new audience members. That's what Series 11 did, that's what Series 1 did, that's what Series 5 did, that's what Season 24 should have done, that's what Season 19 did, Season 7, Season 12, Season sort of Season 4, and now the very end of Season 21. Many other examples. Maybe. Maybe not. Series 8. Yeah, that was the other one. Series 2 and 8. Those were the other ones in the movie. But with this one's case, I think it's actually going to be... I think people are going to be losing audiences before the Doctor's even begun properly. Because the personality here isn't quite good. It gets a bit better next season, but it's a struggling point here. And yeah, those final lines are definitely something to address the audiences. And yeah, whether we like it or not, this is the new Doctor. But because of that, I think quite a few people will decide, the ones who don't like it might not decide to come back, or at least will have, or may just not like the new Doctor, but maybe something like Cybermen or Sontarans or Daleks being in the next season, that might get them in to watch the next season. So, yeah. But that being said, I think Colin Baker is fantastic in the part. Considering what he's got to do, I think Colin Baker nails the part, and he's already off to a good start, performance-wise, or at least acting-wise. The character isn't that great yet. I think he's better next season, as I said, but I think Colin is off to a great start, performance-wise. I think he nails the role. He's perfect as this character. I don't think anybody else, apart from maybe Peter Capaldi, could have pulled this off. Yeah. So thank you, Colin Baker. I salute you for giving the best performance you could with this character, the way this character was written. So thank you very much. Fantastic job. And similarly, I think Nicola Bryant continues to do a great job as Peri. I've actually started to like her more. I mean, Planet of Fire, I wasn't really so keen on her, at the start. She got better as we went along. And then Kate Evangelizani, and now here she's a bit more likeable. For the most part, and I think Nicola Bryant continues to do a great job. Although there was quite a few moments between the two that is a bit awkward, and again, I think the relationship will be better next season. And also, I want to get this out there, I actually like the Sixth Doctor's coat. I'm not a big Colin Baker fan, I'm not a big Sixth Doctor fan, although I do love every single Doctor, and I do love every single actor, but I'm not one of the ones who will consider the Sixth Doctor one of my favourites. It's one of my lesser favourites, at least going by TV stories, but even if I'm not one of those big Colin Baker Sixth Doctor fans, I still love that fucking coat. I still love the coat. It's silly, but it suits him. It actually suits him. In fact, most of the costumes seem to suit their Doctors. I've even gotten used to 13s. So, yeah, and not every single costume does work for their Doctors. I mean, Capaldi's pyjama things, whilst he rocked them, they weren't really doctory. I can see Samantha Dimrich's point about the 10th Doctor suit, but that kind of does fit David Tennant enough. The coat does help. Matt Smith's big long green coat, not really a fan of that. And Tom Baker's season 18 stuff, well, I'm glad I'm okay with that. I'm just glad he kept the scarf. And that's really only about it. Oh, and some of the Dark Eyes 8th Doctor costumes. I'm glad he wore something a bit closer to his Night of the Doctor costume in later audio promotion material. And that's really about it as far as costumes are concerned. I think most of the classic Doctors get away with really great costumes, to be honest. It's when they're wearing alternative clothing. That's where maybe that's where it's not so good. Although that Sherlock Holmes costume the 4th Doctor wears is very good, just so long as it stays for that one story or very few stories, because he needs his trademark scarf. That being said, I do like that blue coat that the 6th Doctor ends up wearing later on down the line. Not in the TV stories, but he does in the webcast real time, and some of the audios he'll be wearing a blue version of this coat, and it's just completely blue, maybe shades of blue, but still very bluish. But here it's mostly red, but it's got other colours as well. But I actually kind of like it, or at least on the 6th Doctor, at least. I think it suits him. And considering his personality actually goes really well with it, his brash personality. I also think the guy playing Mestor actually does do a good performance for what his character is. Same for the guy playing the Professor, and some of the other supporting characters are actually good actors. It's just that their characters aren't that great, apart from possibly Hugo, who's actually a pretty good character in the second half. Not so much in the first half, but in the second half he's really good. The security control people I'm not really worried about. They can go away. I'm fine with them not being in the rest of the story after part 1, part 2. The production design is not too bad. It's just the story is a bit of a mess, and how the Sixth Doctor is written in his first story is very up in the air, especially that first episode. But I think when we get to the next season, I think things are going to calm down a little bit. I think he's going to be a bit nicer. He's going to be less. Well, he's still going to be a bit abrasive, but he's going to not be as bad as here. He's going to be a bit more settled, mostly. I mean, Attack of the Cybermen, he's still a bit scatterbrained, but after that, we're going to be a bit more settled, and we're going to be fine for the moment. I think we'll be fine. Or at least as fine as Series 8 12th Doctor. But yeah, it's just, I think it's just a bit of a shock. And considering this is the last story of the season, yeah, we're going to leave the audience with a bad taste in the mouth. So another reason why it should have been left to be this first story of season 21, and 22, in case of Androzani being the last one of season 21, and another Fifth Doctor Perry story before that. Maybe this story could have been that, but minus the post-regeneration stuff, and we have that in Attack of the Cybermen, and the Sixth Doctor gets to fight the Cybermen in his first story, just like the Second Doctor got to fight the Daleks in his first story. Oh well, but yeah, on the whole, I don't consider the Twin Dilemma to be the worst Doctor Who story, or even that terrible, but it is a bad story. I think it's a weak story. There is some not so great production values, although some of them are alright. I mean, business as usual in quite a few cases, to be honest. And apparently here, according to this booklet, this one had quite a lot of problems, such as the original script having to be rewritten by Eric Saward. So actually, I don't think I can blame Anthony Stephen for the script. I think I can blame Eric Saward. I was thinking, why didn't Eric Saward write this story? Oh, hang on a second. Booklet said he sort of did. Brilliant! Well done, France! Another 80 million write-off! I just quoted one of the characters from the film License to Kill for some reason. I don't know why I did that. I'm keeping it in because it's funny. Yeah, oh, and fucking industrial action. You know, the same stuff that affected Resurrection of the Daleks in the case of Androzani. And of course, the Doctor being quite unlikable is a pretty bad move. I mean, at least the 12th Doctor, for all of his character in Series 8, he was still presented as likable for the most parts. I mean, yeah, he was quite likable for the most parts. I mean, there were some times where you could question him, but throughout the most of the season, he was quite a likable guy, and he was definitely pretty likable in his first episode. And that was why I had such a problem with this story being the final story of the season, because you're opening with a presentation of this new Doctor who's quite unlikable, especially after maybe I don't know. I think Colin Baker was announced in July 1983 as the new Doctor. You've been building him up for about 9 months, and this is how you respect the fans. This is how you treat them. Like I said, I'm okay with someone who's not as nice as the previous incarnations. I'm fine with, but not to the extent that they're unlikable, which is, I think, what we get here. Apart from with the first Doctor, when they're building up the character, and he's not that likable yet, but maybe by the end of the first or second stories, he's okay. He's likable, and you're fine watching him throughout the rest of the season, and then by that point, you're happy with watching him throughout the rest of his era. But with 60, I think they kind of went a bit too far. I think the personality, if they toned it down a little bit, I think it would have been okay if he was just a bit abrasive, a bit tougher, a bit angrier, but not necessarily so rude to his friends, maybe to his enemies. I do like the bit where he tells this one guy to shut up when he's trying to talk to Mestor. I think So I do like he's not taking any nonsense from anybody, and that's the Doctor I kind of like, a Doctor who doesn't take any nonsense. Sometimes I got kind of a bit annoyed with Tom Baker or some of the other Doctors who didn't really take the situations very seriously, like in Genesis of the Daleks Part 1, and I thought they could take the situation a bit more seriously, so having a no-nonsense Doctor is fine. However, the way they've written Colin's Doctor here it's not very good. So, yeah, I think they actually do a slightly better job with Capaldi, or at least to start with. Later down the line, I think they swap round, to be honest. But I think, and then Capaldi gets better after that. But definitely, I think they're able to just about get away with it with Capaldi. Or maybe, I think Eccleston's actually the best one of this type of personality. He's got the best one. Possibly followed by Hartnell. But, I wouldn't mind the kind of a more annoyed, grumpier, tougher, no-nonsense Doctor, but only be rude, maybe rude, but only to enemies or people who's annoying him/her. Yes, I actually thought we could even have a female version of this Doctor and Pat. Well, not female version of this Doctor, but you know what I mean. A female incarnation with these traits. I thought that would work really well. In fact, I was actually remembering something Noel Clarke said about Christopher Eccleston's Doctor being the Daniel Craig of the Doctors. And I was actually thinking maybe my idea for one of my ideas for a female Doctor after Jodie could be a Timothy Dalton version of the Doctors. If we're taking inspiration from some Bond actors, she could be the Timothy Dalton one. That was an idea. That would be something I would like to see. But with what we got here, doesn't quite work. Sorry, writers. Well done for Colin for doing what he could, but sorry, writers, you couldn't quite nail it. Not even Stephen Moffat couldn't quite nail it later down the line, but I think he did it a little bit better. So on the whole, the Twin Dilemma, like I said, not the worst story of all time, but it is a big disappointment, especially when it comes to season openers and post-regenerated stories. And not the best way to start Colin Baker's era. So I'm going to be giving this story I'm going to blow your minds. It's going to be a 4 out of 10. Yeah, I mean, considering most fans, I think that's actually pretty nice. That's a nice score. There were some good bits I did like. There was actually a bit I laughed at, although more for being silly rather than being funny. But yeah, it's a bad story. But like Warriors of the Deep, I'm not going to flat out hate it. I'm not going to bash it to death. I said I was going to rip into this, or at least I thought I would rip into this with my Case of Androzani review. But then I said, oh wait, I might change my mind, because that sometimes happens. And I didn't like this story more on the rewatch. I think I disliked it more, but I didn't hate it. So I'm not ripping into this, and it turns out that this is not a rant. I mean, there are lots of negative points, but this will not be a rant, which will surprise people, and that's fine with me. So yeah, but I still consider this a bad story, and definitely the weakest story of this season, and definitely the weakest story of the Colin Baker era. I don't even have to watch the rest of his era to know that. I'm going to watch the rest of his era just anyway, because, well, for one, I've got to review it. 2, I like/love parts of it. And 3, it's all uphill from here. So there's not really any reason for me to stop watching because it's all uphill from here. So yeah, we don't really go downhill until the 7th Doctor's first story. And then after that, apart from possibly Dragonfire, it's all uphill from there, including Dimensions in Time. Yeah, blown your minds. So yeah, for me, the Twin Dilemma is not one of the worst stories of all time, nor is it the worst story of all time. I've done a massive rant about that particular story. Please check out my rant of the Space Pirates. Thank you. I know the quality is not very good, but the point still stands. Anyway, that's the Twin Dilemma, and next time I'll be ranking Season 21, and then after that we'll be starting Colin Baker's era properly, with the first story of Season 22, and possibly my favourite of his stories, Attack of the Cybermen. Now, I've already reviewed this on the Universal's channel back in March. However, I'm going to re-review this, and I'm also going to do the same for School Reunion. I'm going to re-review those stories. I'm going to remake my Dragonfire and Idiot's Lantern reviews for that channel. So there will actually be links from here to go there, because those reviews were deleted in last year's mass deletion by some prick. But so those reviews are going to be up there, and there will be links from here. Same with the Macroterra 2019 animated version links. Link one to there, and I might also re-review the series 10 and 11 reviews for both, which includes the ones that I did on that channel, which were the pilot for series 10 and the Saranga Conundrum, and It Takes You Away for series 11, plus collab reviews with other members on The Woman Who Fell to Earth and the Battle Ranks Gore out of Collars. But if I don't re-review those, then they'll stay as they are, and there are currently link videos from the main channel to them, just like there's link videos for the Macroterran coming up, Dragonfire and the Idiot's Lantern, to the re-reviews. And I also link the original, and I also link the Universal's reviews in the links for the Attack of the Sidemen and School Reunion re-reviews. A bit like how I re-reviewed Power of the Daleks and Sharda after already doing them for the main channel after their new versions came. The 2016 and 2017 versions of those came out. And a review on the Universal's channel for the Macroterra following its 2019 animated release. After I'd done a review of the store, I already reviewed the story, and I'll do the same for Faceless Ones. Whether this will be Universal's or main channel is yet to be seen, but there'll definitely be a re-review for that one with the new animated version, and there will be a link. If it's Universal, it'll be both channels link. If it's main channel, then it'll just be a link here. So yeah, that's the plan. Okay, so see you guys next time for Attack of the Sidemen, and do check out my review on the Universal's channel in the meantime. Until then, season 21 ranking, and then onto Attack of the Sidemen. And I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel. Yeah, great. Great. Third Doctor. We start off with the cubes. Sorry, that's from one of my audios. From this. No, it was. And then we get the first scene of the plot. The plot starts with the. Well, sort of. Get up. Ninth Doctor, the first time we see him is it's great to see the past. No, and when the dinosaur spits out the TARDIS, it's only a few minutes late. So yeah, my problem with Twin Dilemmas 1 is the fact that it's not, because my problem with the Twin Dilemmas 1 is the fact that it's not setting up the plot. It's not setting up its characters. It's just a scene with these two kids, but we're going to get much more interesting and, dare I say, developing plot points later on that would have worked either better at the start, or which would have either worked. I think they tried doing that with 12th Doctor, but they then dropped it midway. Particularly love a scene in Mark of the Rani where he tells the Rani that Perry is relevant to him, even if she's not to anyone. And I love, so there's some very annoying sounds. There's a siren again. Go away. At least it hasn't been happening simultaneously every day for the last few weeks, like it did a few weeks back. Right, it's gone now. As I was saying. So well done, Colin. Salute you for having to. So well done, Colin Baker. I salute you for having to do the best performance you can. Sorry. So actually, can we consider and? And yeah, of course, the Doctor. And I thought actually maybe we experiment of a like third, not, but maybe the 14th Doctor could be this, but maybe that's actually. In fact, I actually started thinking maybe she could be the Timothy Dalton of the Bond. 3, it's all better from here. And 3, it's all up here. And 3, it's all up here. And after that, we'll be starting the Colin here. But if I don't re-review those stories, then again, link videos will take the normal. So that's it from the Macro Terror on the Universal, based after I did the Macro Terror 2019, after I did the Retro Channel review, and the review of the 2019 version of the Macro Terror after I literally did, and the 2019 and the Universe. So you read the title right. This is not a rant review.